The Thanksgiving table at my parents' house groaned under the weight of traditional dishes and family expectations. 23 relatives gathered around the stories of success and gratitude while I quietly carved turkey in the corner. At 28, I was still treated as the family's underachiever, the daughter who'd wasted her business degree on what everyone assumed was some failed real estate venture. My golden child brother Marcus, 31, held court at the head of the table opposite Dad, regaling everyone with stories from his job as a regional bank manager. His wife, Jennifer, and their 3 young children represented everything our family valued: stable employment, traditional success, and the kind of lifestyle that looked impressive to neighbors. "This turkey is perfect, Mom," Aunt Patricia declared, raising her wine glass. "And this house, you've really made it a showplace." The compliments flowed around the table while I remained invisible. Despite being the one who'd quietly paid for the new kitchen renovation, the roof repairs, and the property tax increases over the past 2 years, my parents' retirement income couldn't cover their lifestyle, but they'd never acknowledged where the extra money came from. "Speaking of houses," Dad said, setting down his fork with obvious purpose, "I want to discuss some family business while we're all together." The conversation quieted as relatives turned their attention to Dad's announcement. He had the same tone he'd used when declaring major family decisions throughout our childhood. "Marcus and Jennifer have been looking at vacation properties for the children," Dad continued, "and I think it's time we made better use of family assets." My stomach tightened. I had a feeling I knew where this was heading. "Your brother's children need a vacation home," Dad declared, gesturing toward Marcus's kids with grandfatherly pride. "They deserve the kind of childhood memories that come from having a special place to escape to every summer, Uncle." Robert nodded approvingly. "Wonderful idea, Tom. Family properties should benefit the grandchildren." "Exactly," Dad continued, pulling out a manila folder from the sideboard, "which is why I've decided to transfer the beach house on Sunset Drive to Marcus and Jennifer." The words hit me like a physical blow. The beach house on Sunset Drive wasn't some family vacation property. It was my primary residence and the headquarters of Morrison Property Holdings, the real estate investment company I'd over the past 4 years. "Dad," I said quietly, "you can't transfer that property." He barely glanced in my direction. "Sarah, I know change is difficult, but the house is wasted on you. You barely use it for anything productive." "I live there," I said, my voice remaining steady despite the rage building inside me. Marcus leaned forward with condescending sympathy. "Sarah, you rent a room there sometimes. It's not the same as actually owning property." "I see. Mr. Morrison, according to our records, you haven't owned 1847 Sunset Drive since December 2020. Could you clarify your current ownership status?" The silence around the table was deafening. Marcus's fork clattered onto his plate. "That's impossible," Dad stammered. "That property has been in our family for 15 years. "It was in your family," Patricia Williams confirmed, "until it was purchased by Morrison Property Holdings in December 2020 for $285,000 plus assumption of all outstanding debts." David began frantically shuffling through his transfer paperwork. "There must be some mistake in the records." "There's no mistake," Patricia Williams interrupted. "Morrison Property Holdings is owned by Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, who is listed as the sole proprietor and legal owner of the property in question." Every eye at the dinner table turned toward me. The turkey and cranberry sauce suddenly seemed very unimportant. "Sarah," Mom whispered, "what is she talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that when Dad defaulted on the mortgage payments 3 years ago, I purchased the property to prevent foreclosure," I said calmly. Dad's face cycled through confusion, shock, and dawning horror. But we never missed payments." "Because I've been making them," I replied, "along with the property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs. For 3 years." Marcus grabbed David's paperwork and scanned it desperately. "This can't be legal. Family property transfers don't work this way." "You're right," Patricia Williams's voice continued through the speaker. "Family transfers require the actual owner's consent. Mr. Thomas Morrison, attempting to transfer property you don't own constitutes fraud." Jennifer looked between Marcus and me with growing panic. "What does this mean for us? For the children's vacation home?" "It means," I said quietly, "that you were planning to steal my house." Uncle Robert sputtered indignantly. "Now wait just a minute, Sarah. Your father would never." "Uncle Robert," I interrupted. "Attempting to forge property transfer documents is a felony. David, as a notary, you're legally required to verify ownership before witnessing any transfers." David had gone completely pale. Sarah, I had no idea. Your father assured me. My father assured you he owned property that he hasn't owned for 3 years. I finished. That's called fraud. Patricia Williams continued with professional precision. Ms. Morrison, do you want to press charges for the attempted fraudulent transfer? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Dad gripped the table edge, his face ashen. Marcus looked like he might be sick. That depends, I said, looking directly at my father, on whether this behavior stops immediately and completely. Mom found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Sarah, honey, we had no idea you own property. Why didn't you tell us? When would I have told you? I asked. Jennifer nodded agreement. The children would get so much more value from it. They could invite friends, learn to sail, build real childhood memories. Besides, Dad continued, opening his folder, I've already had the paperwork prepared. The transfer is simple, just family helping family make better use of resources. The family notary, my cousin David, who handled real estate transactions for extra income, pulled out transfer papers with professional efficiency. He'd clearly been briefed on this plan before arriving for dinner. Everything's ready to sign, David announced. I've prepared the deed transfer, tax documentation, and title insurance paperwork. We can make this official right now. The relatives murmured approval at Dad's organizational skills. Aunt Patricia clapped her hands together. How wonderful. Marcus, you'll have such a beautiful place for the children. I in growing horror as they arranged the documents across the dining room table, pushing aside dinner plates to make room for what they saw as a generous family gift. The property's assessed value is $340,000, David explained, though the market value is probably closer to $450,000. Marcus, you're getting quite a deal. Marcus beamed with satisfaction. Dad, this is incredibly generous. The kids will love having their own beach. House. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. I glanced at the caller ID and felt a mix of relief and anticipation. Perfect timing. I need to take this call, I said, standing from the table. Sarah, we're in the middle of family business, Mom protested. Whatever it is can wait. Actually, I said, answering the phone, I don't think it can. Ms. Morrison, this is Patricia Williams from the County Deed Registry, the voice said clearly, through my phone's speaker. I'm calling about the attempted property transfer for 1847 Sunset Drive. The dining room fell silent. David looked up from his paperwork with confusion. I'm sorry, attempted transfer? I repeated, making sure everyone could hear. Yes, we received documentation today for a property transfer, but our records show some irregularities that need immediate clarification. Dad's confident expression faltered slightly. What kind of irregularities? Sir, are you involved in this transaction? Patricia Williams asked professionally. I'm Thomas Morrison, the property owner. Dad replied with diminishing confidence. The house you were planning to take without asking? Marcus tried to salvage some dignity. Sarah, if we'd known you actually owned it, you would have what? I interrupted. Asked nicely before trying to steal it. The ownership was never the issue, the theft was. Patricia Williams continued her professional duties. Ms. Morrison, I'll need you to come to the courthouse Monday morning to file an official report. We'll also need to flag your property against any future unauthorized transfer attempts. Thank you, Ms. Williams. I'll be there first thing Monday. Wait, Dad said desperately. Sarah, surely we can handle this privately. As family. Family, I repeated slowly. You mean like how you handled purchasing my property privately when I saved your house from foreclosure? Or how you handled telling me privately before planning to give away my home? The silence that followed was heavy with guilt and dawning understanding. Actually, I continued, there's more to this story that everyone should hear. I pulled out my own folder from my purse, one I'd brought specifically for this conversation. Patricia, while I have you on the line, could you confirm the other properties owned by Morrison Property Holdings? Certainly. You own 1847 Sunset Drive, 234 Oak Street, 567 Pine Avenue. She began reading off addresses. With each property address, more family members recognized places they'd visited or heard about. The little rental on Pine Avenue where Cousin Mike lived. The cute starter home on Oak Street, where Aunt Patricia's daughter rented her apartment. Wait, Aunt Patricia gasped. Sarah, you own Linda's apartment building. I own 17 rental properties, I confirmed, including the apartment complex where 3 of our relatives live, the downtown office building where Uncle Robert leases space for his accounting firm, and the shopping center where Marcus's bank rents their newest branch location. Marcus choked on his wine. The Morrison Plaza? That's you own Morrison Plaza. I named it after our family, I said simply, though apparently the family was too busy dismissing my work to notice. David was frantically Googling on his phone. Sarah, Morrison Property Holdings. This says your company is worth $6.2 million in assets, annual revenue of $1.8 million, and growing at about 30% per year. I finished. I'm not a failed real estate dabbler. I'm one of the most successful property investors in the county. The revelation hit the dinner table like a tsunami. Relatives who'd been pitying me for years suddenly understood. They'd been sitting with a multimillionaire who'd been quietly supporting multiple family members without recognition. But why didn't you tell us? Mom asked weakly. I tried. Every family gathering for 4 years I've mentioned my properties, my business growth, my investment strategies. You've responded with advice about finding stable employment and suggestions that I stop playing with real estate. Patricia Williams' voice returned through the speaker. Miss Morrison, I should mention that attempted fraud against a property portfolio of this size elevates the severity of the case considerably. Dad's face went completely white. The Thanksgiving dinner ended in chaos as relatives processed the revelation that their unsuccessful family member was actually a multimillionaire property mogul they'd been patronizing for years. David packed his fraudulent transfer documents with shaking hands, knowing his notary career was effectively over. Sarah, Dad said quietly as the family dispersed, I need you to know I had no idea about any of this. You had no idea because you never asked, I replied. For 4 years, Dad, 4 years of building a business empire while you planned my life around your assumptions. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin. What happens now? With the investigation? That depends on whether this family learns to respect my actual achievements. Instead of dismissing them, I said calmly. Marcus approached hesitantly. Sarah, about the beach house. I'm sorry. We genuinely thought you could take my home. Without asking because you assumed I didn't matter. I finished. That's not a mistake, Marcus. That's a choice. Monday morning at the courthouse was awkward but efficient. Patricia Williams processed my fraud complaint while Dad, Marcus, and David sat in the hallway waiting to give their statements to the investigation unit. The local newspaper picked up the story. Local real estate mogul prevents family fraud scheme. The article detailed how a young entrepreneur had built a multi-million-dollar property empire while family members assumed she was unemployed. 6 months later, Marcus and Jennifer purchased their own vacation home with a traditional mortgage and their own money. Dad's credit was damaged by the fraud investigation, but no criminal charges were filed. After he completed court-ordered financial counseling, the beach house at 1847 Sunset Drive remained exactly what it had been for 3 years. My home, my office, and the headquarters of Morrison Property Holdings. No family Thanksgiving dinner would ever threaten its ownership again. David lost his notary license and had to find a new side business. He learned the hard way that verifying ownership isn't optional when you're witnessing property transfers. The family learned that assumptions about success can be expensive, especially when they lead to attempted theft. They also learned that the quiet person at the dinner table might be the most successful person in the room, if they'd bothered to ask.